who'd like to start and who'd like to admit to how they're spending their time? By the way, in the middle, of course, he's dealing with clients, and you've got lots of clients to deal with. Then you maybe don't have time for content. You don't have time for prospecting, but that's the dangerous time, because if you're not prospecting when you've finished with the clients, you've got to start all over again, and it takes time to take people through the sales pipeline or the marketing pipeline. So who wants to be brave enough, because we're all safe here, to admit? I mean, I'm going to start with Andy, because you're very much in a sales background, a sales role. How is it? What's your balance?
In a bit of limbo at the moment, Paul, because like a lot of us here, I'm re-engineering how I engage with people. And very much, I've always been, obviously in my background, it's the old school ways of outbound prospecting, cold calling, and networking and stuff like that. Whereas I am a big fan of inbound, but there's a lot of assets that need to be created for it to then be a good way of doing things, which is what I'm in the process of doing at the moment. So
you just said that you're re-engaging. That tells me that you are spending, and I know from a comment last week that you had about video, that you're re-engineering, you are really building up, you're populating your content so that you're going to get more awareness. But how, you've got to say also how and how fast are you going to get people to that content? That is another issue. But what you're doing in the meantime, are you still reserving time to reach out to maybe people and why is that less important? Because you're changing.
It's not less important. I mean, I've been always quite regimented that I block time every week to engage with customers or follow up with existings, to keep in touch with people, keep things on a boil. So I've got a nice number of inquiries at any given time. Like you said, otherwise we get busy fools. We do all the business, and then we've got no more business. Then we market.
So when
we've got time to do the business, and then
So when you're doing outbound prospecting, what's your favored method? Is it picking the phone up? Is it emailing, or what?
Depends on the client. To be fair, it's a bit of both. So I'm quite happy to pick up the phone and cold call, and sit patiently trying to duel with the gatekeeper. But equally, I spend a couple of hours researching on LinkedIn a couple of people I would like to talk to, and then finding their emails, etc., and sending a nice introduction email to maybe engage with them to start the process of talking to them.
Right. Okay. I'm almost tempted to say, do you look for the email first, or do you look for the person that you know already that has a good first line contact? I
generally look for somebody that's connected.
You do, and you ask those. Anybody else? I think Chris has fallen over. Oh, I thought he was standing on his head for a minute. Marcus.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I use a number of channels and do spend a fair proportion of my time building up my prospects, especially as I'm quite a new business to branding photography. LinkedIn, I'm back on doing LinkedIn again and really enjoying that after having a couple of months break. And I've got the Google ads, and one-to-ones. I try and get 3 to 4 one-to-ones in a week, either on Zoom or face-to-face. So a number of different things really, but I do spend a lot of time prospecting. Well, that makes me sound like a miner, doesn't it?
Well, it is. You're looking for that diamond that will
looking for that gold.
Help you retire. You do Google ads.
I do Google ads. I have just cut down my spending on it quite a lot because I put the money to doing SEO instead. So I'm doing SEO for me. But I do. I mean, Google ads does work. I mean, it's quite expensive. For example, yesterday I had somebody phone me up. Oh, can you do? And mainly on Google ads, people want something quickly, and it's mainly headshots. So somebody phoned me up in the morning yesterday. Oh, can you do some headshots today? And it's like, oh God, whatever. Yeah, come round. And they came round, and I did those headshots from them. And they ordered loads, and they want branding for their business as well. So yeah, that does work. Google ads.
I find it's quite interesting. You're doing Google ads and it's producing results. Maybe they're not the sort of results that you would ideally like. So could that not be about tweaking the ad?
Well, I think doing headshots is quite a good introduction way to get into doing branding. So I'm happy with that. I'm happy with that. When the ball starts rolling more and more, I won't necessarily do the headshots and won't need the Google ads. I think. Oh, did I just mute? No,
you haven't muted.
Sorry, came up with mute for some reason. Yeah, so I do spend a bit of time doing it and doing different stuff, but LinkedIn certainly is the one that does take quite a lot of effort. Well,
I'll come to Rebecca in a second. I just want to question that. So if the ads are not, because the point is, and this is the difference. I know SEO is important for people searching, but it also takes time, takes a constant amount of money because you've got to keep it up to date. So there's nothing wrong with that at all. But by far the fastest way to get in front of people is by paying to get in front of them. And if you've not been getting in front of the right people, in your view, it could be somebody's hammering on something. You're not nailing a coffin lid down, are you, Ron?
I'm in the van, mate. I'm in me lone van. No.
I think Chris is chopping.
Is he having breakfast? Rod, it's not the body knocking on the coffin.
Well, I was hoping it could be.
No,
Yeah, I was hoping.
I'm running a slide business behind you, Rod.
I see. We caught you out there. And you know that Rod drives around with Bob Dylan is knocking on heaven's door, blasting through his speakers. I mean,
yeah.
I have to start calling you Waffer.
On a serious note, because I want to get to Rebecca. Okay, so that has got to be the fastest way. And I don't know what anybody else thinks, and I know that Ewan's not with us today. I think he's back next week. It'd be interesting because I would have thought to tweak that would have got you more business. However, there's also a strategy that says, and you've said it, headshots can lead to other things. So plus the fact that if the headshot pays for your Google ads, then you're getting leads for nothing.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
So that's a well worth people thinking about that. If you've got a low ticket price offer that ends up when you do the analysis, because you can at least do the analysis. SEO is not as easy. Well, you can analyze that, but that's why I'm more in favor. Anyway, I just thought I'd mention that. Rebecca.
Actually, it was a question for Marcus, because I really liked his last post on LinkedIn about the supermodel. I can make you look like a supermodel. And I was just wondering, because I've seen posts, you've done other posts as well, like how do you, because it's more a slow burner, isn't it? Those sort of things. So do you find that people you want to connect with are noticing you? Because I'm sort of thinking of making it more of a habit for me to put posts up.
I mean, that's a great question. I mean, the more views you get, the more you post, the more comments, the more people see what you've got in your network. But still, I do believe it's only about 10%, maybe not even that, see it. So another way you can do it is if you comment on somebody if you've got somebody you want to work with and you comment on their posts, and they reply back to you or they notice it does, then you can start, you've got more chance of getting two-way traffic. So that's how you can get more noticed. So it's not just putting out your own content. In fact, it's more important to post, to comment on other people's stuff. And then you can be more selective.
Okay, because that's what I've been doing for a while, is sort of almost sort of following the people I want to kind of get in with and commenting and stuff, but it's just sort of them presenting.
Rebecca, it's a real slow burn, LinkedIn. I've got to say. Funny enough, somebody was talking to me about it yesterday, and I would say, well, especially with the COVID and all that, everything's been shut down. So it's not, but I'm probably saying people are getting, I noticed that someone got in contact with me yesterday from a year ago. who I connected with, and they said, "Oh, you know, we spoke about this on LinkedIn last time." So it's like, you know, that's pretty slow, a year, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
I think obviously we're going to delve a bit deeper into
Yes.
LinkedIn per se next week, but I will pick up in a minute on that slow burn. But before I do that, Anne-Marie.
Thank you. I don't know whether Nick was first, but I'm going to jump on.
That's cool.
Sorry, I didn't see that. So
no, it's fine. Just a couple of comments actually to make. The quote you said at the beginning about the difference in a year is the people that you know. I can't remember exactly how it was, but from where you were a year ago to where you are this year. That was one of the quotes you showed at the beginning.
yeah.
I just wanted to sort of say that is 100% true, because I'm at the point now where I'm almost approaching a year, and I can very clearly see the difference between where I was last year and where I am this year is the people that I've met, and that includes all of you guys and everybody else. And so that is a massive thing, even if it's not about people doing business with you, it's about the support network, it's about, you know, everybody that kind of contributes. So that was just, I wanted to kind of put that out there. But the other thing is, most of my prospecting is done networking. I tend to find, for me, that is the most beneficial. If I have a period of time where I post regularly on LinkedIn, then I do generally get a lot of engagement. But as Marcus just said, I wouldn't necessarily say it converts to business. Most of my business comes from actually direct networking.
In actual fact, that's one of the areas that I want to talk about, because I guess a lot of people, in my experience, a lot of people, that is the way they're prospecting. And I'm going to come on to that in a bit more detail. Nick, I do apologise. I didn't see that.
That's absolutely fine, Paul. Don't worry.
I was giving Anne-Marie far more attention, clearly.
I think there's one thing that struck an chord with me that you mentioned at the beginning, Paul, in your kind of first section. You talked about consistency and, you know, doing something regularly. And I think I'm sure I'm no different to other people here. It's really easy to kind of focus on one thing, think it's not working. You move on to the next thing, that doesn't work. You move on to the next thing, and you're constantly just switching. And I think if you actually put the time, and I'm guilty of this as much as anybody, if you put the time, I think, into thinking about really which approach and which channel is right for you, and then trying to stick at it and forming that habit, which I know I don't do. So I'm not saying that I've nailed this one by any sense, but I think there's definite value in that, because it then becomes the habit and then it becomes normalized. And I think, a bit like Anne-Marie was saying, she's stuck at networking and she's put the energy into it. She's built the relationships, and now she's seeing the benefit from that coming from a year on. You're absolutely spot on there, Nick. You are spot on. It's very easy, and I've almost hinted at this with Marcus now, so I hope you don't mind. It's very easy, especially when we're creative, to spend our time moving from one. We get bored with the way we're doing things, and we maybe think there's an easier way. And consistency is so much more important. You see, that's why I'm suggesting to Marcus that we spend maybe a little bit more time, not saying SEO is not important, but frankly, if he spent more time on developing his skill set, and maybe that's something with whoever he's working with, to develop and really fine tune the Google process, he will know that it's actually not only making him money, because he'll be able to measure those results. So maybe he's spending £20 a week on Google, but he'll know how much that's delivering. And if it's not delivering enough, then maybe he's got to either spend, well, I wouldn't necessarily spend more. He's got to get that message right. And I know Rod's probably got something to say on this, because he does that. And although he's not an expert, but he knows the effect that he knows the effect that his leads that he gets on the marketplace versus the Google
pay-per-click that he gets. I mean, do you want to comment on that, Rod?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things is to analyze what you're doing, and I analysed what I was doing last. In fact, it was only last Thursday with the guy that looks after my website, and we worked out that most people, or 100 or so pounds out of 250 quid that I spent over the last month or so, was just people typing Wells Funeral Services. Well, if they know your name, you can get rid of that. So there's a way of analysing what you're actually spending and what you're getting back, so it's quite an interesting concept when you're looking at Google. But I mean, I think the thing is, like Nick was saying about, the pivotal part of my week every Wednesday is the market. It's pivotal. It's important. Even if I'm bored to death there and just speak to a load of people that I've known before, it's visibility. We know how important visibility is. And then when I do other advertising, and I know, Paul, you're always saying to me, "Oh, what do you spend all that money on advertising in the voice and what have you?" But it's just that the old lady across the hallway from me, she says, "What are you doing in here again, Rod? We know who you are by now," but they soon forget. So I've got to keep myself at the top of the pile because everybody else has been in the funeral business for 500 years, or it seems like it. And I'm the new kid on the block and always will be.
Yeah, I think you get it right, Rod. Maybe, and I think the web designers here would agree that a regular call to measure the effectiveness of what they're spending is great added value, because I know that your conversation revealed that you were wasting some money.
Yes,
and by the way, I'm not against you advertising in the press. I think we not everybody's digitally astute. Not everybody has or is on a computer very often, apart from Facebook, or even not everybody has a computer. They've got their phone. So newspaper is good. It's the difficulty is knowing where that fits in with your spend versus results. And I know you do ask, where did you hear about us? So you do get, and it could be the different touches. So I'm not against any of that. But you need to have a certain amount of money to be able to afford to do that. And you're marketing led. If you've got a limited amount of money, you've got to say, where is it most useful in helping me get in front of people? And how can I measure the effectiveness of that? Mel, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, we talked about, you talked about focusing on an audience. I've got two audiences. I've got clients and I've got candidates. And with a client, it's all about timing. I send emails. It's all about hitting their inbox on the day they've had a problem or have been let down or have made a wrong hire. And recently I've moved not away from, I'm still prospecting clients, but I'm concentrating more on candidates because the market seems to have gone full circle. 6 months ago, I'd got more candidates than I could place and not so many clients. Now I've got a really good client who's desperate to get 3 account managers, and they're out there, but they don't seem to be moving. I'm working with a headhunter who's also targeting account managers, but the message is, we want to stay put. And I think it's all about waiting till what companies decide to do at the end of furlough, and that's going to happen at the end of September. We're expecting the whole market to change.
I think, though, that you're putting the work in right now, Mel, so you will suddenly get that explosion. And I think that's the point that Nick is making, that, the consistency, sometimes you can feel you're not making that progress, but you've got to make a choice as to how you're taking people through that marketing pipeline, that sales, I'm going to call it a sales pipeline, because that's what it's intended to take you through. And if you stop doing that, then your system is broken.
Well, like Rod says, then you're forgotten as well. You've got to be front of mind. You've got to be out there. It's got to be a rolling program of activity.
Yeah. Zois has got a point, and then Ollie.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Apologies that I haven't been here for a couple of weeks. I took a break and had some holiday, but I think the prospecting is a really interesting thing from my point of view in coming from the health and fitness and just the way that I built my business, it's not something that's always been at the forefront in terms of putting yourself in a place kind of regularly each week. It's very much either word of mouth, or if you're going to advertise and things like that. And so I like the idea of thinking, yes, okay, I'm going to put a regular time. And like you were saying, there are so many different avenues and ways to explore to do it. I think one of the things for me is, okay, look at take 5 ways, and then it's almost like, okay, I'm going to try each of them and see how much of my time and effort it takes to just do that thing, for A, B, C, D, and then which one feels like it's easier to do, or just lends itself to me and my kind of like work or schedule, so that actually it's easier to kind of like incorporate that time, and I have enough time, and then I can be able to kind of follow it up. And because I think that's one of the things with a lot of people here, is that when it's just you, it's like you do have to think about, okay, how much time is it going to take? Have I got that time? And what is at the moment the best avenue of call to do it through?
I think you're right there, Zoe. So I think, and this is what we're talking about, is what's the balance of time? The challenge that I would say that we have is that by default, we move to what's comfortable. And what's comfortable may not be what is necessary. In other words, we might not feel comfortable reaching out to people. I think Tom, the master tailor last week, talked about the fact that he enjoyed the call, and I've got a call with him today at midday, is that he thought he enjoyed the call because he wasn't asked to do a 60 seconds. He enjoyed but he finds interaction with people, it doesn't come easily. So therefore that becomes the challenge that he's got. And somehow we've got to think how we can overcome that. So a lot of people, they feel a bit nervous about reaching, they feel a bit awkward, they feel a bit pushy. Whatever you feel may be stopping you from stretching your comfort zone. Our own comfort zone is going to hold a barrier. And if you just analyze again what you may have written down, how many people did I reach out to? How many people did I end up speaking to? Then this week, last week, if you can see that consistency of how many people you're taking through your pipeline, or is it just that you're putting the content up and waiting for people to come to you? You may wait a long time for that. Ollie, you had a point.
Yes, just on that. And also, I think I was just going to comment on what Marcus and Rebecca are saying about the importance of that two-way conversation, especially on social media. And I've worked with so many people that kind of can't figure out why their social media isn't working, and they seem to be doing all the right things. They're posting up 3 times a week, for World Carrot Day, World Broccoli Day, or whatever, and they're just not getting that kind of response back. And it's just because they're not interacting with other people. And as soon as they start commenting on, like Marcus was saying, the people he wants to work with, you start commenting on their posts and building a kind of a relationship and just a memory in their heads of, oh yeah, that was Marcus, he liked that, and that kind of connection. And they see their kind of social media kind of just rockets from doing that. And then just very quickly on because I do both Google Ads and SEO for people, and I find Google Ads is really good for kind of like the instant win, if you know what I mean. Like you can spend and you get it, but you do almost get found with a few clients get hooked on it because you need to keep up with that spend to keep that work level coming in. Whereas with SEO, although you do need to do it over a consistent period, once you've done it and you're ranking well for certain keywords, then you stay there as long as you keep on top of it regularly. So I think they both kind of have their place with it really for different companies, and especially if you're a new company launching, I've got one at the moment, and their product just wasn't going to get found organically for a long time. So they spend, 50 quid a month or so on Google Ads, and that's helping them get up there and getting orders through. And then eventually they're working on the SEO with me to try and get it so that it kind of one goes over the other. So I think, they both have their place really with things.
You're saying exactly what I've said, that especially new people, they need to bring business in, for their own mindset, to say, I made the right decision in launching this business, to learn about their business and to pay for their business. There's no such thing as free. You might want to do, there's no such thing as free. You might say, well, I'm going to build my own website. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to spend any money elsewhere. But the time it takes you is what it costs. So it's not free. Can I come on to networking? Because it's funny, Anne-Marie mentioned that. But to me, for a lot of businesses, if you're doing networking right, then it's a very, very valuable way of getting in front of prospects. And I don't mean necessarily the people that you're networking with. And I think that can be the challenge with any networking event. It's not about whether they will be a customer or could become a customer. They are not necessarily your audience. If you know your audience, you'll straight away know whether the people on this group right now, for instance, are a potential prospect. You will know that. And, there's no reason why you can't get into a conversation in that way. But that's very rarely the case, especially when timing comes into it. Has Andy got me as a potential customer? Well, I'll win the lottery. Yeah, definitely. Fancy that car behind. Even if it's only to prove my younger son wrong. But timing and all of that is so having a networking strategy, as well as talking to lots of people, is really key. Because if you're talking to people on your network, whether it's the remote network on Zoom or a networking event on Friday, then you can think, what is the strategy for that? Because if you know what your audience is and the value you bring to that audience, I will be using those connections that I make to get to that audience, but I won't be doing it on the day. My entire focus on the day will be to connect with people, find out about what their businesses are, connect with people I've only met remotely. Chris, I've already met. Who else is going to be on the call, by the way? Who's coming on Friday? So I'll meet Anne-Marie for the first time, Andy for the first time. I've already met Nick. I'll meet Andrew for the first time. That'll be great. But I will not be pitching marketing crew. And in fact, I'll talk very little about me, or I'll try not to. It'll be about them. And the more people I can do that with, because it begins the relationship. And I'm saying this as a recommendation to yourself. It begins the relationship. The key is in the follow-up. The key is always in the follow-up and how you follow up. Because if you've made a good first impression, why wouldn't they want to get on a Zoom call for you to explore ways in which we might be able to help each other? Obviously, the people I think I can help or can lead me to I'm going to come to you next, Anne-Marie. The people that can lead me to who I want to talk to presupposes I have a clear idea as to who I want to talk to. So you've got to really map that out ahead of time. Anne-Marie.
Yeah, just on that, I've sort of made an observation because one of the networking groups I go to is a BNI group. And they've just started introducing the best 60 seconds. Whether that's a good thing or not, but it doesn't really matter. The idea behind that is that people start to come up with a little bit more engaging content in their 60 seconds. And I make a point of listening intently to everybody's 60 seconds, and probably 95% of them just go, they're not memorable at all, because, you know, they're not putting anything into it that actually makes me go, wow, I'm going to remember you, even though they're in my group and I see them every week. So I've been experimenting with ways of changing up my 60 seconds. And last week I won the award for the best 60 seconds, which is like, you don't get anything. So, but what I did was, I thought, instead of trying to explain or tell people what I do, why don't I just show them? So I literally said, right, to everybody, take yourselves off mute. The first person that can shout a Shakespeare quote at me will get a free 45-minute workshop, either for them or a friend. And there was this awkward moment where no one said anything. And I was like, this is going to be really embarrassing. It's just going to go. And then all of a sudden there was like this massive kind of like voices. And everyone was like, that was genius. And I just thought, yeah. And I'm not saying it was genius, but the point I was trying to make was that I didn't actually say anything about me or my business, or I didn't say this. Do you know what I mean? I just kind of went, do you know what? If you want to know what I do, here's a way to experience it yourself, etc. So, and I think if more people were a bit more creative with their pitches, they might find a better return.
It's I'll come to you, Nick. It's quite interesting that I mean, I've attended many meetings like that, and I sit there, I take notes. I'm actually looking at who needs help or how they're doing things. And I also, and I've got journals with every meeting I've been to where I've actually written things down, the name, and then I look for what they're asking for. What do they want? And the number of times I write a name down, I haven't got a clue what they want because they're not asking for what they want. They tell me what they do, but they told me that the last time I was there. I know what they do. I want to know what you want. And if you can create different ways to do that and then ask for that, what you want. Right now, I'd love an introduction into the senior buyer at Yo Valley Foods. Or right now, I'd like to have an introduction to a PR specialist. And let me tell you why. Because I've got this challenge with so-and-so, so-and-so, and so I'm looking for it, blah, blah. Can you see what I mean? Tell a story. Interesting thing happened to me with a client this week. She came to me with and blah, 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 blah. And this is why I helped her. Single mum, blah, 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 blah. So what I'm looking for is single mums that have the sort of issue that I've just described, because that would be a great introduction for me. Asking for what you want specifically, however you frame it to get there, will get people thinking about who you want, what you want, and who you want an introduction to. You're out to talk about introduction, so you must have a clear idea about your audience, i.e., and that can vary a bit, but that's what you're looking to do. Who did I just say? It wasn't Marcus first.
Me.
It was Nick, right?
Yeah, Paul, I think Anne-Marie was absolutely spot on there about trying to do something different. And I don't know about everyone else. I find sometimes I can use so much energy and brain power to try and think of something different at a networking group. Sometimes it can be really hard work. And I think, I know, sometimes I try the approach of just going completely off script and trying to do something that's just in the moment. And sometimes that gets really good engagement. But if I can just mention Chris for a second, we're all, there's Chris, Andrew, Michael, and myself, we're all members of Business Focus Networking. And Chris, I've done some work with Chris recently with Andrew, and Chris was really giving. He had an opportunity to talk potentially about himself for 15 minutes, but he didn't. He gave us the opportunity to talk about how we collaborated with him on his project. So he brought in the web designer, the photographer, and the graphic designer, or the brand designer, and Chris, the client. And we all talked about what we brought to the project. We tried to throw a bit of humor into it, Chris, didn't we? I think.
Yeah.
But we wanted to show the power of a collaboration, and we just wanted to do something different to just talking to the group. I don't know how it was received. I haven't kind of seen any feedback, but I think it. Yeah. I think we all enjoyed it as a group, and we tried to just do something different, Andrew. I think, didn't we? Which
I think the fact that you're thinking ahead and you're preparing yourself for that meeting is the key.
Yeah.
What Anne-Marie is talking about is the laziness that people come to a networking meeting. They don't prepare. They don't think ahead. So they're spending most of the time when everybody else is giving a 1 minute thinking about what the hell they're going to say. I used to say, I've got to tell you, it's when I was training people, I'd say, you need to know that when you stand up to do your 1 minute, nobody is listening to you. They're busy preparing their own meeting. Don't be like that. Prepare your own. You've got to grab their attention. You've got to grab their attention, because like in marketing, if you haven't got their attention when you stand up, then the rest of what you say is just going to go. And so if you analyze what they're doing and then do the opposite, that's the key. It was Marcus first, then Andrew.
Thank you. Yeah, Anne-Marie, I'm in a B&I group as well. And we've had that competition running for a little while, a few months. Yeah, I mean, it is amazing how poor most people's pitches are. And this competition, in some ways, I don't know if it really helps, because people just try and come up with either something that's amusing or pun laden or whatever. And what they never do is ask who they want to be referred to and how you can approach that person to tell them about you. So, you know, then very rarely do they do that. And yet that's what B&I is all about. So it's just a bit odd. I do agree.
Well, education is the key to that. And if the chapter is not educating, or the regional director is not educating, you need to be nudging him or her to actually do that. Education is the key. It's the only way you can improve. The recognition bit's very important. It's very nice. But the trouble is, whoever is making that decision as to who would win, they used, in my chapters, they used to have criteria. In other words, was it within the 60 seconds? Was somebody specific? Did they ask for something, etc.? Was there any creativity? So the person that was doing it was ticking off or whatever. Nobody would ever win unless they got it within the 60 seconds.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
In other words, there was a criteria which is part of the training first, then the criteria, then you will improve what's being done.
Indeed.
Well, apparently I have the power. So whoever wins gets to choose next week's winner.
That's right. So you can say, right, this 1 minute isn't about the funniest or the most popular.
That's right.
It's about the people that do the following. You got to be within. There's no reason why you can't, just repeat what I've just told you. Or produce your own
I could just nominate myself every week, and it would be fine.
You want to say, look, we're going to step up the game, guys. And then all of a sudden, Anne-Marie's got that authority. You gotta. It's women that do these things. Rod, you've got
I think what I would say, I know when I first joined BNI, which was many years ago, what really got me going for the first 2 years was personal development. And I think everything that most people talked about in relation to BNI is personal development. Just standing up and saying something for 60 seconds for most new business people is not easy, and learning things from each other and just immersing yourself in being able to say something interesting, and also to be able to ask for the things like where we are we're on a different plateau here. And I think, certainly for me with the BNI, I learned a hell of a lot in the first 2 or 3 years. And then, you realize you only get out, it's all the BNI expressions, isn't it? You only get out what you put in, what goes around comes around, all those things. But I think it's a very valuable thing. And for you guys to voice it proves to me that it's still doing a fine job.
Absolutely. So back to prospecting. How do we prepare our networking activity? Because the networking is just part of the marketing strategy. It happens to be about engaging with people who can put us in front of the audience that we want. And how are we preparing for it? I don't know. I'm going to show you what I'm preparing, and I don't know whether I've got it right, but I'm going to try it and just see whether it works. And I'll show you that in a second. Chris.
No, I was just going to say, Paul, I mean, Friday's interesting for me. I think Friday for me is a big deal with this group because it means finally I get my hands on people. So I intend to do probably 40 people going, if I don't get my hands on 25 of those people and do them a hand massage, I'll feel I've failed, because there's no way I can make anyone feel the way they do after a massage until I give them a massage. Now, I can dress it up, I can do all sorts of fancy stuff, and I'm reasonably good at selling that without putting my mitts on people. But the best way I've got of getting anyone to really engage with what I do is to actually do it.
Good. And so will you be taking your chair in? You don't need a chair, do you?
No, I don't need a chair, just need my hands. Got them.
Yeah. Nick, how you? Sorry, your comment and how are you preparing?
Yeah, it's interesting actually. Nick Sladek has asked me to do some photography on Friday, and I kind of looked at it and I thought, it doesn't matter whether I'm being paid or not. This is a wonderful opportunity for 50 people to see me with camera in hand, capturing the event. And we're doing some headshots at the end as well for anybody that's interested. But it's just about being seen with the camera and building those conversations. And as Chris said, taking the online conversation into the real world conversation. So I'm really looking forward to it from that point of view.
I think your time as a freebie is a good investment. I mean, obviously you've got to balance that. You can't be spending the next 6 months giving out for free, but at certain times that is a great investment. I'll tell you what. Let me share what I'm planning to do, because I haven't been to an open networking meeting in 18 months because of lockdown, etc. I've ended up on these Zoom calls. It's really the only networking I do. So I've had to think, well, I'm going to do this because I don't have any business cards. In fact, I've never ever traded heavily on business cards anyway, to be honest. Because most of them put them in the pocket and then transfer them to a particular drawer, and that's where they stay, because most people don't follow up anyway. I would prefer to get somebody else's card and follow up, and I'll always follow up. I'll have personalized messages prepared so that as they come into the database, before they've got home, they'll probably have an email from me which will invite them to connect on LinkedIn or to follow up in some way. And I know that a percentage won't do that, and that's okay too. But this is what I'm playing with at the moment. Where am I? And I'm looking at this as not as a business card, but as I think it's half of a postcard size. And that's the front of it. I'm using and that's, I will be in a suit. So I think the benefit of on a business card or whatever, a photograph is when, if they're meeting 40 odd people, how will they remember that person? I've always found a photograph on a business card or whatever very good. And thanks to Marcus for that. And basically, I don't know whether I'm playing with this, but I know that a lot of people used to scanning now because of COVID, etc. And it just says, let's stay in touch, scan the QR code to add me to your address book. If anybody wants to take their phone up and scan that, it will be automatically, as long as you press go at the end, be added to your address book. Now, knowing that most people take a business card and don't put the details in the address book, I'm not expecting that to do anything more, but my website is marketingcrew.uk. So there will be some curiosity there, hopefully. And then I just say exactly what we do at Marketing Crew. Come join the conversations. For anybody that hasn't got a smartphone, they could always look us up there. So that's the front part. The back part, and I could have chosen a few things to do, are simply marketing notes. And it's just giving them a bit of help or posing questions about how they're getting in front of the audience most likely to need the solutions that you provide, blah, 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 engage, etc. And at the bottom, it's got my phone number, etc. Now, I don't know whether that would be welcome. I could have put any content on there, but most people leave the back of a business card blank anyway. I think that is to me adding value. It's showing a bit of, adding useful information. I could have put on there notes about who you've met or, or whatever. I could have put 50 keywords about what I'm interested in. So to see whether there might be a connection. There's lots of things we're going to do, but I think the key part of that is the scan me. And by the way, if you want to know, I'll put it in the chat in a minute. There's a free site I use. I don't pay for the services, but any website that I want people to go to, I can produce a scan code immediately and download and include it in publicity. And I think that's one of the ways forward because it's quite new, it's interactive, it enables something to be able to be clickable and go straight to a site. But I didn't realize that you can also use it to share your details with another smartphone. And so if anybody's done that already, I'm going to stop the share. Did you see how that worked? Has anybody done that? Ollie?
I love that, Paul. That's really, really nice. I really enjoyed designing business cards for people because there's something quite challenging about putting information into a small card. But there was an article on the BBC this week about has COVID killed business cards and that we're not giving them out. And so I think to have a different form like that, Paul, where you're offering an information that they're going to keep hold of and read. So for you, the marketing tips, or for Anne-Marie, it could be, the top 5 words to start your book with and things like that, that just give people a little reference card or point that they're then going to look at again, aren't they? And remember, okay, that was Paul or Anne-Marie or whoever kind of thing. So yeah, I really like that, Paul. Really works really nicely.
I think also the fact that I've done that is going to make it stand out rather than all my details that you normally put on a business card. I've put you need to play around with that because it looks as if you've got to pay for it. You just put your email address, put a website in, click generate, and you'll see it generate in the background. Then all of a sudden you've got a code that drops onto your computer, which you can then test it yourself. Where I've put scan me, that is a paid for extra, but deciding I didn't want all the other services, what I did is I cropped that. I did a screenshot of that, cropped it, and then when I put it into that document, I found the size, and then I got my scan code and I put it over the scan code that's in the graphic. So I was able to do that. Debbie's smiling at that. You see, I'm also a savvy northerner that knows how to save money. Anne-Marie saying for once I've actually got the chat here. I don't know why I've not done this earlier because I want to thank Andy for his suggestion about long-term value when you're spending money to get prospects. The long-term value, that's providing you stay long-term and you stay in touch with them. You've also got to know what the short-term value is to keep paying the Google bill. But Anna, use additional business cards which has a QR code, etc. And I know that there's other cards that you can just give them the card and scan. In actual fact, I probably don't need business cards. I can just take that out and say, look, just scan that. Great, you've got my details. And I know that iPhone users, if they can know what buttons to press, can just hold their iPhone up and share that. But I think the QR code's a lot easier. So, and what else is people doing? Chris has said how he's preparing. Anybody else going, and how are you preparing for? And I don't mean just for this networking event, for any other networking event. See, when you prepare for a networking event, you're preparing for a business meeting, and therefore you've got to know what are the afters. What do you want to achieve?
Sorry, Paul. I was also thinking about what to wear because you mentioned you were going to wear a suit, and obviously you lot might have done, but I've spent the last however long, in jogging trousers, should we say? So the prospect of actually putting something business related on. But I think that's crucial personally, because not only does it give the impression to the people that you're meeting, but it puts you in that mindset. So that's something that I've been kind of thinking around as well. Don't know what else.
It's interesting that I've mentioned that, and it's just to remind myself because of this session that I put a tie on this morning, and I do occasionally. So I feel comfortable in casual. but also I'm at a business meeting, and I think it's who you are. I mean, Marcus and I have discussed this in great detail when he came to do the photo shoot. And of all the shots that he's taken, some great shots. You know, my favorites are the ones in a suit, because I also slightly think that it's likely to stand out a bit, because most people will not be in suits any longer. It's not necessarily the thing. So you're constantly thinking about being remembered and standing out. And I know some people might think, is he a stuffy accountant or solicitor? But I hope my personality will change that perception. Andrew, then Rebecca, and then Mel.
Yeah, I think with regards to attire, I think you need to pay the right respect to what you're doing, but you've also got to be yourself. And I know the ultimate example of that is Brad Burton, who certainly is, just turns up as himself and makes an apologist for it. And I will just say that since Chris has decided that he's going to be massaging people at his place, I've changed my outfit choice.
Brad Burton's not turning up, is he?
No, not to my knowledge. But I mean, he's very t-shirt, jeans, doesn't care less. You know, he is what he is, and you either love it or leave it.
What I'm shocked about, though, is that his business has gone to zero and he's having to rebuild it all over again. And what I can't understand is that didn't happen to B&I. That's not happened to Nick Sladek's business, has it? You know, and I can't understand why that happened. That's a real mismatch.
I think he
too much of a loan on his car.
Somebody else, was it? Did you have a point, Rebecca, or?
Oh, am I on? Yeah.
With Mel.
Actually, it was just about you, Paul, about wearing a suit. I just got a flash of one of Marcus's pictures of you in a suit, and the words "call me old-fashioned," because I think you do say that sometimes. But you're a really interesting mix of, you are quite kind of proper in one sense, but you've got this really young approach to life where you see opportunities and you're open to new things and you're curious and you want to keep learning. So I can really imagine that sort of quite fun guy in a suit.
Yeah, well, you want to check out my new shoes on Friday.
Oh yeah, perfect. Some jazzy socks and you're there.
Socks, Paul, yeah.
Mel.
Yeah, I think it's not only what you wear and people's perception of what you wear, and I think it's how you feel yourself. I think Anne-Marie picked up on that. I think you've got to feel good and you've got to feel right. And I think, and I think, you know, going back to your suits thing, I've seen some of the shops from Marcus, and I think, yes, it's a suit, but some of them you come across an individual because you've got bright yellow socks on. Mm. And I think it's important to create that sort of image, because I think people have moved on for suits a little bit, and I wouldn't go in a suit because I've not been wearing suits for years, and I think that's just me. But I think it's, you know, it's the old dress to impress, isn't it?
I think you've raised a good point there. I think you've got to feel comfortable. I think you can't be what you're not. So when people try and be something they're not, or they try and compare themselves with somebody else and they want to try and be like them, it's authenticity. But the real key is being interested in the person that you are in front of. The person that you're in front of is the most important part of the conversation. And if you never mention what you do and they never ask, it doesn't matter. They are the most important person. And I've got to tell you, if you end up with that impression, leaving that impression, provided that you follow up, and even if you don't, and I don't know why you wouldn't, and it won't be a follow-up to say, you know, buy my stuff or whatever. It'll be an invitation to stay in touch, And the point is, if you're doing enough, if you're putting enough people through that pipeline, because you're going to be prospecting, you're going to be making connections on Friday, or whenever it is you're meeting tomorrow, your visitors are the most important part. As you're building, your relationship with your other members at B&I. But visitors, I always would follow up. always. If it was only to thank them for being, for being there, because there's the chance to build up your own networking. So any excuse, any way in which you can do that. So I'm looking forward to Friday, and I'm looking forward to other events. Rod,
what's happening on Friday? Or am I the only one that don't know what's going on?
I haven't sent it you yet, but it's Friday. If you fancy, we can drive together. It's an early start, 8:30 in Bath. We're both old age pensioners, so we can get the park and ride.
Go and get the bus for free. I always think the old expression, Paul, love the one you're with.
That's a very
love
good
the one you're with.
Crosby, Stills and Nash number.
Don't dream about that blonde, with all the other assets. Love the one you're with.
Right.
I won't be in a suit, by the way.
Sorry?
I say I won't be in a suit, Paul.
That's fine. You'll be who you are. You could wear that. You could wear the outfit that you wore at the pageant. With the tricorn hat and the big cleaver.
Yeah, Jack. Yeah, I could be him, couldn't I? Yeah, I could be the executioner.
Yeah. It'd be good. If hopefully I've inspired a few more people to go. So. Right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go around and see what people have got from this morning's meeting. Remember, next week we're going to be talking about LinkedIn and see if we can develop I'm going to learn off most of the people on here, but see if we can develop a strategy based on what we've been talking about today. It shouldn't be rocket science. So I'll start with Mel. Anything any takeaways, what you've got from today's meeting?
I think what I've got is, again, looking at focusing on the audience, and I think it was interesting to listen to the last bit about face-to-face networking. And I can't make Friday, but I'm looking forward to, having a few more of those and being able to get that chemistry, because I think the chemistry comes across a lot more face-to-face when you're in the same room with somebody. So looking forward to that.
I promised everybody a date for a meetup in Wells, and I know Chris was working on a date for a meetup in Bristol. Bath is covered. So I will, before the end of the day, I'll at least give you a date, and then I'll work out what we do after that. Andrew.
Yeah, really interested. And I think Ollie said this actually, spot on. That card that you've done, because you've added value in that card, people aren't going to bin it, they're going to keep it. It's probably going to be floating around their desk. So that's going to keep you in the room, as it were. So that's a bit of a stroke of genius, actually, I think.
Good, thank you. Debbie.
Yeah, I was actually just thinking about your card as well. It is a really good idea. So I got a load of little business cards done, and I mean, I've had them, for lots of years for my singing business as well. And I just always forget them anyway. And then it's when you give them out to people, you think, oh, they'll just forget about that. And it's the same. I always forget about it. I find random business cards in drawers when I'm clearing them out from years ago that I forgot about. So yeah, I think having a big one is maybe a good idea. Yeah, I use QR codes as well, but I always put it just to my website or to a video or something rather than getting it onto the phone, which is quite interesting.
Well, you can do it. And in fact, I considered that. It's only when I discovered that you could have a connection that puts it into their phone, which makes it easier for them. And by the way, I've only chosen a slightly bigger one because otherwise you wouldn't be able to read what I wanted to put on the back. I'd have to adjust what advice. I mean, if you think about the afters in that, what could you put of value that isn't salesy on the back of something, because the back you've paid for. Nick.
Yeah, good session, everyone. I really enjoyed that. I think consistency for me is the biggest takeout. Stop the flitting and kind of really just stay a bit more focused. And I loved Anne-Marie's. She talked about just being more interesting and more varied and being more memorable in your 40 seconds, 60 seconds when you're networking, and putting that effort into really listen to people when they're talking as well.
Certainly,
so important.
Interesting is good. At a networking event, being interested is even better.
Yes.
And that's why if you're at an event, make it clear you're making notes at a live event, especially one, do take notes.
It's the old be interested and be interesting, isn't it?
Yeah. But taking notes shows that you're interested. It's business-like, and it shows. You might say, do you mind if I take notes? But so I remember that is a subliminal thing that gets people thinking. Anne-Marie.
Yeah, mine is really strategy. It's kind of really what Nick was just saying about having a consistent presence, because I know that when I do it, it works, but it's not an ingrained habit. I try to make it so, but it isn't. So it's just that reminder to, keep up with whatever whatever the prospecting is.
I must admit, some of us here are very much more comfortable in being face-to-face. I have always been more comfortable face-to-face. Hate telephones, hate telephone call, telecalling, cold calling, because I was brought up actually visiting hairdressing salons, ones I'd never visited before, just walking through a door and making a connection. I find it so much easier, so much more comfortable. And even when I was doing any telephone calls, I would always find it easier to have a microphone to do it, because I could use my hands. The phone became a barrier and I hated it. So I prefer Zoom calls. The phone was the barrier mentally. I thought about this. Whereas, having a mic, it wasn't a barrier. And also I would stand up. Anyway, I'm digressing. Andy.
Well, I'm one of those people that do quite enjoy the telephone, and probably, when I'm in the zone, sometimes I've got the headset on, and like you, I'm doing a bit of a Jerry Maguire, and I'm using all my body language to send it down the phone. But all joking aside, like everybody else has said, I think it's consistency with our channels. Pick 2 or 3, be consistent, and just do them for at least a fixed period of time, and then measure what you get.
That's spot on, Andy. Spot on. Ollie.
Yeah, just exactly the same, really. Consistency and strategy. When I think about other things that I do, whether it's in work or personal life that work well, and it's just doing it regularly and having that form that really healthy, good habit around it. And so, yeah, I think making prospecting one of those healthy habits that is just done, like you say, sort of 30 minutes a day, or even if it's only just 30 minutes a week to start with, and then building it up. So yeah, definitely consistency and strategy for me.
I think it's only when you get, it's like any data, you've got to have a certain amount before you can actually measure it as to know whether it's working or not. So, and you can only do it through consistency. So maybe the idea of setting a target for the outbound calls or the whatever method you're using, and that's something, I'm going to have to do as well. So, Rebecca.
Yeah, really useful session. And I think, like everyone said, about consistency and forming those habits. And I was thinking maybe I'd do more of a conscious effort. So maybe do a networking calendar. So I put in definitely, opportunities for networking. And I was, as we were talking, I was thinking of a couple of people I could get in touch with to suggest about going for a coffee, like a PR person who works with architects and construction companies. I mean, she'd be a good one to talk to.
That would be brilliant. You can only say, look, I've been following the work you're doing. I admire it. I wonder whether I can have a coffee with you and pick your brains, or whether I can treat you to lunch and pick your brains, and then know what questions. That would be a very valuable investment. And finally, Rod.
Yeah, I think for me, everything's already been said. The pivotal part of my week is a Wednesday, so making sure there's consistency. I tend also to try and analyze my week in as much as, have I made the till ring? If you're a real business, you've got to make the till ring on a week by week basis, month by month basis. Have I covered my outgoings? I'm always doing that little accountancy thing on my shoulders, always going, are you making a profit? So, and there's so many things when you're driving a business all on your own. And so this is why these sort of things are very important to share, because, we get so much more out of it, don't we?
Good. Thanks, guys. We're about 4 minutes ahead rather than being 4 minutes over, which just seems to be which is a tendency to do so, which I need to pull in on. So thanks very much to everybody's contribution today. I hope you've got something useful out of that. And to those people that are meeting on Friday, and I'll send you the details, Rod, I'm looking forward to meeting you and maybe having lunch together, because lunch is included. So see you all then. Have a great week.
Cheers then. Bye.
Bye.
Cheers all. Have a good week.